So Gustavo Scarpa has left Nottingham Forest to go to the Greeks. But that then brings on the question, who else should go, and should they have gone before him? Welcome to your Forest News. Good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever in the world you are, whatever time of day you're watching this. Hope you're doing well, and welcome to your latest Forest news. In today's video, we're going to be focusing more on the players going out than the players coming in. I don't know about you guys, but I am sick to the back teeth of every single person being linked with Nottingham Forest. We're then hearing, £5 has gone in as an offer with a loan to buy, and then nothing materializes off it. So, a change of pace today, a less frustrating video. It's going to be a discussion about players that are going. Now, these aren't players that I necessarily myself would get rid of. I think these are the players on the chopping block for Cooper in terms of who he wants to go. And let me know in the comments below, who would you get rid of this list and who would you keep? We're going to go through the valuation of these players. We're going to go through the length of contract they have and potential links to any clubs. Now, it's easier said than done moving players on, that's for sure. But I'm sure the club are doing what they can to move these guys on. And we're just going to bring it to the forefront and see what you guys think. Okay, so let's get started after, of course, you guys have hit the like button and subscribed if you are new. And the first player that I think is up for the chopping block is going to be Emmanuel Dennis. Now, he's a player that I've backed. I think there is still a good player in him. I don't think he's in Cooper's plans. So let's kind of park the debate of should he stay or should he not. We do know there have been links. We've seen Leeds linked with him this summer. There's been talks about him going to Saudi clubs. There was links of him going away last January window as well. For whatever reason, Forest are struggling to move him on, but it does seem very clear that they are actively trying to move him on. Now, we paid 12 million for him last summer, plus some add-ons. At the moment, his current valuation is around £7 million. So Forest would be looking at taking a £5 million hit, which isn't good. But when you add his wages in, he's probably on somewhere around 30 to 40k. You do get a net saving, and sometimes it's better to cut your losses than continue on and paying and ending up with a Harry Arter. So I'm not saying he is one, but clearly not in Cooper's plans. And that would be 7 million extra potentially, depending on the structure of the deal, into the Forest kitty, where this kind of stuff, the whole point of today's video, is if we did get rid of these fringe or non-Cooper players, we may have a lot of money to play with to actually buy a decent player instead of doing all these weird offers that we're currently seeing. So player number one is Dennis, and he can go for about 7 million. Would you get rid or not? Let me know down below. Okay, let's move on to player number two. And this is the one that I think we're all unanimous on. And that is, of course, Jonjo Shelvey. Jonjo Shelvey, Forest paid about 6.2 million for him in the January window. We told you about the whole falling out. We told you what happened at the Old Vole and why he's basically completely fallen out of favor with Cooper, even though he is clearly a Cooper signing, as Cooper wanted him and would. I mean, they both jumped straight pretty much into the team sheet, so you can derive it from that. However, his valuation has dropped slightly, but not too much. He's in and around 4 million, about 4.2 million, something like that. And he's contracted until the end of 2025, as in, when I'm saying end here, obviously I mean June, the end of the season. And Forest are definitely struggling to move him on. And I think he is turning into a bit of a Harry Arter, where he's almost putting two fingers up at the club saying, I'm contracted for a good more couple of years, guys. 65 to 70k a week. I'll take that. I'll take that. Easy money. He's going to be one of the harder ones to move on because we are paying him so much and he's still got a couple of years left on his contract. He may be wanted by, say, a promoted Premier League team, but they wouldn't be able to pay him his wages. He could definitely be wanted by a lot of championship teams, but they can get nowhere near him on the wages. Therefore, this is going to be a massive, massive problem for Nottingham Forest. But let's assume that we can get past all those hurdles. If we're able to get rid of him for about 4 million, maybe we should have sent him to the Greeks instead of Scarpa. Tonight, we'll talk about that tonight. But that plus the Dennis 7 million. Again, I know it's not, I'm making it simplistic, but I'm just trying to give you some rough figures. Add that 7 to the 4. We're looking from 2 players now at 11 million extra pounds in the old piggy bank. But would you keep Shelvey or would you get rid of him? The funny thing is, I still think there is a player in him. I would actually hope that they could put their differences aside and get things sorted, because I don't think we'll sell him at the end of the window. And I think maybe we'll have to get used to the idea, if they can kiss and make up, that Shelvey could be somewhat useful. I don't know. I'm just thinking back to his Newcastle times and hoping there's still a player there. But get your thoughts in. Would you keep Shelvey or get rid? Okay, so let's move on to player number 3. And you may or may not be able to see him at the bottom of the screen, because we are talking about the ghost, Remo Freuler. And you know what? As weird as it sounds, I still think there's a decent player in him. I just think he's played out of position. But again, this isn't a debate about how good or crap a player is. This is about potentially players leaving. And why have I put him on this list? Because we have seen interest over the summer from Juventus for him. Now, nothing's really materialized from that so far, but he is potentially a player that could go. Now, what's the club stance on him? They're quite happy to keep him, as in Cooper is, but if he were to get a decent offer for him, I think they would be willing to let him go. So, how much is his current value on the market? You're looking at about 7 million. We paid, I think it's somewhere between 8 and 12. I don't know the exact figure on Freuler, but he's one that I personally think should go, not because I still think there's a player there, not because of that, because he's the wrong side of 30. And the longer we keep him, the less and less value he will be worth. It will just keep depreciating as we go along. Therefore, logically, 7 million for him, I think is worth it. And that would bring our running tally so far off these last couple of players up to in and around 18 million. So we're getting quite close to 20 million from 3 sales. But would you let Freuler go or not? Let me know in the comments down below. All right, so let's move on to the 4th player, and that is, of course, Lewis O'Brien, who we know has had some kind of issues within the club, be it because he was playing on Twitch or the fallout from Leicester, etc. But he is not in Cooper's plans, that is for sure. But he did get named on the bench against Arsenal. Really weird. We know he went out on loan to DC United in the second half of the last season, and he's come back and has been named, but has lost his number 14 shirt to Scarpa. Anyway, Lewis O'Brien is a value of about 10 million, but we did him as a buy one, get one free with Harry Tuffalo last season. And currently on the market, he's worth about 7 million, and we do have him under contract until 2026. Personally, look, let's not go into the personal stuff. I like him. You all know how I feel about him. I think a lot of you are interested in him. But again, I'm biting my tongue. This is about the players that Cooper potentially wants to get rid of. So if we add his 7 million onto the running total, we're getting closer towards that 25, 27 million pound mark now. And there are a couple of other players that potentially should be on their way. You look at Panzo, for example, being linked with Rangers over the summer, a couple of other clubs as well. He's worth about 2.5 mil. You look at Embasso, 2 mil around there. And then you look at potentially Horvath, who we know Luton had an option to buy him for 1.5 mil, something like that. And they decided not to take it. But once you tally all these players up and you put that kitty together, you are looking at something in and around 30 million pounds. As I pressed the wrong button, of course, 30 million pounds to get these 5 or 6 players off. Now, it doesn't sound huge in the greater scheme of things, but when you add their wages on top of that, and most of these players, apart from the likes of Panzo and Embasso, are going to be 30k plus. And when you're looking at Shelvey, you're looking at 65 to 70. That really does start to add up. Now, we've seen the likes of Steve Cook go, and that saved us about 30k a week on wages, which is really huge for the club. Getting rid of these wages is extremely important to helping us with FFP. And if we were to take that 30 million, that could be the difference between us picking up a Sangare, for example, or not. And that 30 million could be very useful. That 30 million with FFP can be spread quite far, because if you were to buy a player, say, for 20 million over a 5-year contract, you're literally spreading that across. So that only counts as 4 million towards FFP. If you're not sure what I mean, go check out our FFP video from a couple of weeks ago. So although that 30 million doesn't sound big, you can really, really stretch it out. Now, there are a few other players that we could talk about. Chris Wood, for example. It's not worth it as there's no current backup striker to Onwanyi. We do know as well Chris Wood is Cooper's signing. I mean, he got chucked straight on against Bournemouth, wasn't it? Before the ink was even dry on his contract. So does Cooper want to get rid of Chris Wood? Well, we don't know. But I would add him to that list. But potentially, would we see anywhere near the return of the 19 million total we've spent on him? I highly, highly doubt it. But let me get your thoughts on that list. Is there anyone on that list that you want to stay at Forest? Or is there anyone you want to add to that list? Now, I know you're all going to say Harry Arter. I agree with you. But let's just make our peace with that. Harry Arter is with Forest till he dies. That's the truth of it. That contract is basically unlimited. And every single end of year, he seems to get a pay rise. What an agent he does have. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed that video. Slightly different turn of pace. If you have, please don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. And come on, you Reds.